Good evening. Welcome, everyone. First thing I wanted to say, welcome to our new member, Lisa Foster. Is that right? She was with us at Middlebrook Park and decided to join. And we have a couple members that are renewing, so welcome back. Did have some announcements. The first, what's that? Oh, they're new? New. Oh, I thought you said you renewed. I apologize. Well, yeah, welcome, and we hope you get your worth out of the club. We do a lot of neat things. So, we are having an outing Saturday. We'll be leaving the Farm and Fleet parking lot. We will head from there over to Kankakee Sands, where they have a pretty decent bison herd. We'll see whether we can find them. There's a lot of other things to look at over there. And then late morning, noonish or whatever, we'll head from there on up to Jasper, Pulaski. That's the main focus of the trip, and that's for sandhill crane migration. They, the last count last Tuesday was 6,000. I expect that number to go much higher with the count tomorrow with the weather we've had. There could be 10, 15, 20,000 up there at times before they move on farther south. They should stick around for another month. So hopefully we'll see some good sandhill crane numbers and some photos up there. 2 weeks from tonight is our member spotlight. We have two members that talk about their photography and the trip they've done. Jim McInerney will be talking about his Vietnam trip. And my email was in error. I thought it was Tetons, but it turned out to be Vietnam. That's corrected in future emails. And then Susan Coulter will talk about her Alaska trip. About 45 minutes roughly each presentation. Our meeting on the 12th, December 12th, we're going to have more or less an informal type meeting. If a couple members want to come up and talk about something that's in their bag, equipment-wise, it might be of interest to other members, maybe something a little unusual that members don't necessarily know about, or a really cool lens, or whatever it is. They're welcome to talk about it. We're also going to have a swap meet, so be looking through your equipment and find out what you might want to sell or swap, or what you got in mind maybe you want to buy if somebody has it. Just kind of an informal end of the calendar year meeting. That is our last meeting of the calendar year.
Oh, and Steve?
Yes.
I did check with the library, and they said that we could have drinks and snacks or whatever.
Okay. We'll send out more information on that. It sounds like maybe we'll be able to do kind of a minimal potluck snack-wise. So.
Yeah, we can't have hot drinks, but we can have little snacks.
Okay.
Hot food.
Yeah, we'll send out more information on that. So. That's what I have on that. On the 17th, December 17th, we're planning to do a Christmas light trip. And I've come up with 3 options, and we're kind of giving the members the opportunity to vote where they want to go to. We can go to Allerton Park again. They always have a good setup. We did that last year. We did trains in Monticello, and then we went out to Allerton Park for their glow. I did find another one, Shelbyville Festival of Lights. In fact, the day that we would be going down there, the 17th, they're having a lot of events in coordination with that. They're doing a festival of trees. They're doing photo booth. And they're going to have a Christmas concert from 6 to 8. So that could be quite a bit of fun. Our third option is down at Coulterville. The bad part is that's 3 hours away. But they have a 1 million light walkthrough display, and they have a 2 million light drive-through display. So most of the members, I think, really want to leave that one out, but I did want to mention it as something you can do on your own.
6 hours of driving.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's something you can even do on your own. So.
Shelbyville's 1 hour and 21 minutes,
right.
By the way.
An hour and a half, that's not bad.
So.
In January, we're still planning the meetings on that. One of the meetings, we're hoping to have an edit your photo where you have a photo you'd like to see other members, how they would edit it, bring it in, we have a member or two take a look at it and say, well, this was my photo, this is what we would do. You might be able to pick up some tips and tricks on Lightroom especially. Another meeting, and I'm trying to get a hold of the gentleman that wants to do it. We're hoping to have a presentation on the air show photography. So, Jim, you had a couple of announcements on webinars.
This week there are 2 webinars for those that are interested. One is on Wednesday night at 7. It's sponsored by Hunt Photo, and it's about the Canon R system camera, so it's the mirrorless camera. If you want to learn more about mirrorless cameras, that's Wednesday night at 7. It's the link to register and to attend is on our club website, and so if you go to ChampaignCountyCameraClub.org, is it? Org?
Champagne Camera.
Okay, Champaign Camera Club.
County's out.
No county. But on that website, under members only, our password is camera. And then there's a webinar link, and you could look at all the webinars coming up. This second one this week is on Thursday night, and it's sponsored by the Springfield Camera Club. And it's a photographer I don't personally know, but Jim Nix, who's a nature photographer, and he's going to show some of his work and then a little bit of editing. So that'll be Thursday at 6. So if you want, and that link is also on that same page. So if you want to look at those or read about them, they're on our members only page on our
Well,
And then
when did
there's
they
one in
introduce our,
December too, right? On
yeah,
Wednesday.
there's actually 5 coming up, but
Okay.
this week there are 2.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna mention that same night, that the first Wednesday in December, it sounded like a good webinar, but there's also, Springfield Camera Club has invited us to join them on a holiday light show, walk in downtown Springfield. They're gonna meet everyone at the church where they have their camera club meetings, and then they're gonna walk and walk and walk and walk. So you have to be able to walk and walk and walk and walk, carrying a tripod and a camera.
When is that?
It's Wednesday, I'll put it out. So, but Vicky Mudd will need to know if we're coming, because they don't want to wait if we're not coming. I mean, I think I'm going to go to the webinar, but we'll see. But, yeah, okay.
without further ado, I wanted to introduce Ray Silva. He's talked at our club a couple of times. He's been featured on several websites. He's won several awards. I apologize, I forgot to print out your biography before I came, but a lot of us know you. So without further ado, we'll let him get started about black and white photography and editing.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Turn lights up.
Oh, yeah. That'd be okay.
If you don't mind, I'll be doing this sitting down because I'll be having some of the presentation, but I'll also be doing some demonstrations. So I'll just stay here instead of running around. Okay. Tonight's topic is black and white options in Photoshop and Lightroom. How many people use Lightroom here? Good. How many Photoshop? Okay, good. I'll talk mainly about Lightroom. I'll talk a little bit about Photoshop because since they're kind of sister programs, there are some similarities between Photoshop and Lightroom as far as black and whites go, but I'll talk about that. Black and white. Tonight I'll talk about a little bit about the background. I can't talk about black and white without talking about film photography, a little bit about the cameras, the developing and printing of film. Just talk a little bit about some of the master photographers earlier in this past century, and also a couple of current ones. We'll talk a little bit about the theory of black and white zone system, and then get into the digital post-processing. I think it helps one understand a little bit about black and white photography in order to process or develop them in a digital manner. Black and white is just the root medium for photography, basically. That's where it started. It's been the medium for many, many years. Color started coming around in the 1940s, I guess, and of course in the 50s and 60s it became popular to color film. And of course with digital, it's, you know, I would guess 99% of people process in color rather than black and white. But everything started in black and white, and the reason is because that was the chemistry. But black and white is more than an edited technique. It's a different photographic language altogether. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just want to show you some of the early cameras around. I guess most people have seen a Kodak Brownie top left. There's an antique photographic camera to the right that has a folding bellows. It folds up pretty compact. The one bottom left is a Hasselblad, which is probably one of the most popular professional cameras. And the one on the right is a Rolleiflex, which is a twin lens reflex. And again, they're used pretty much by some of the masters. This is a view camera. You've probably seen pictures of some of the famous photographers, or even out west back in the 1880s and 1890s, where photographers were out there with their covered wagons with a view camera, you know, taking plates of coated chemical and inserting it in the back there and exposing it, and then developing it somewhere. And then all of a sudden, the 35 millimeter became a thing. Cameras became more, I say, less expensive. People found it to be popular. Film came in a 35 millimeter format, and who has not shot one of these 35 millimeter film? Everybody has? I kind of figured it might. But basically, in the film era, the chemistry was used to develop a print. The steps were basically, and again, all in the dark. That's what they call it, a dark room. You've got a developer using a silver emulsion. You've got a stop bath fixer. You've got some rinsing, and in the final results, you've got a film negative. This is not the final thing, you've got a negative. And then you've got to kind of repeat this, where you've got some photographic paper that has a salt emulsion on it, and you expose the light through the negative, and you develop the paper. And again, you use a developer, stop bath, and sodium hyposulfite, and it removes some residual silver halide salts, and then final rinsing. And then you dry the paper, and you end up with a positive. So a number of steps in here, and it's a lengthy process, and some people have gone through this before. Top left is an enlarger, where you take your negative, film negative, and insert it there. There's a light box on top, and you expose it downward, and there's a photographic paper at the base. To the right, you see a developer. So over here is the enlarger here, and here's all the wet stuff here, the chemistry on overhead. And of course, you got a drying line here once your paper has been finally exposed and washed and all that. So this was the old dock room. Who hasn't heard of this guy here, Ansel Adams? Well known for his black and white photography. Other notables I've got to mention, Edward Weston, which was a contemporary of Ansel Adams. Imogen Cunningham, David Bailey. These are some names, and you'll see in some well-known black and white prints over the years. Theory of black and white. Basically, the Bible was written by Ansel Adams. He's got 3 books, and there's many more. But he gets into the camera itself. He talks about the negative, what you do with negatives and how you handle negatives in developing, and also the final print. The zone system he developed basically says that there's 10 zones of light, a pure black, which has no detail at all the way through the number 10, where you have a pure white source. And basically it's the same color as the paper. So, and you've got gradations in between of different tones of gray. Note that the exposure time was critical to achieve the depth of tones. We're not worried about that in the digital end. Dodging and burning was basically introduced by Ansel Adams to make some adjustments, localized adjustments to the final print. Ansel Adams was a master printmaker. A lot of people think, well, he was a great photographer, no doubt, but he made his mark as a printmaker. He pioneered the technique of localized dodging and burning in wet printing. Dodging and burning are steps to take care of mistakes God made in establishing tonal relationships. Pretty bold. This is probably one of his more popular images. Can you tell some of the dodging and burning areas in here? The light in the sky, the light on the mountains to the on the left center, and also the Snake River. But also the burning there, the mountains and the tree line on the left-hand side of the river. Has anybody here seen any of Ansel Adams' prints? Yeah. How big are they? Yeah. A lot of them are about this size. The final prints.
If I may, this particular photo I saw in Aspen one time in an art shop.
Right.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And it was from the original negative, and they wanted $250,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Now, a lot of times he used a field camera, but it was like an 8x10 negative. And a lot of his prints are that size. But you're right, some people, in fact, if you go to the University of Arizona, there is a department that has a number of his original negatives. And there's a way people can go in there and obtain, maybe not the original negative, but a copy of that to work on themselves and print. But I'm not sure if Ansel Adams made that size print. And, somebody else could have, but a lot of his original prints are 8x10s. It's amazing. I would have expected something larger, but he just didn't have the equipment. But someone did. Anybody heard of Clyde Butcher? No. Okay. He's been called the next Ansel Adams. He's won the Ansel Adams Award. And he has prints that size. And he makes them that size. He's got a view camera here. He's down in Florida, and I was associated with an art group that hosted a series of his prints, and some of his prints are the size of that lighted area. It's just amazing. You can go on YouTube, and I know he's been on, I don't know, 2020 or 60 Minutes or something like that. They've done a film interviewing him, and he takes you through his darkroom. And he's got baths that are this big to process his prints. But it's amazing. He does a lot of environmental stuff right now. And he's standing in hip boots, and he's up to basically his hips in water in the Everglades. He'll go out by himself, wandering around.
He doesn't have a guard to keep the great gators off.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Really?
do gators like tripods?
Michael Kent is another one that is well-known in the present. He says black and white's a medium. It's more mysterious because we see in color all the time. We all see in color. And it's more subjective than color, and it's quieter and calmer than color. I've got a friend that is colorblind, and he absolutely cannot see any color. So he sees the world in black and white. So he's got some interesting stories as far as getting dressed. His wife's got numbers all on his clothes, so he'll know what to put together. But here's Michael McKenna in some of his black and whites. I just wanted to give you some flavor of what's come before us as far as black and white technology and art. They say a negative is like a score of music. It's played differently at different times, meaning that if I had a digital negative and I gave it out to 5 people and they came back next week, they would all have different interpretations on what the exposure would be and what it would look like. You can't make a good print out of a bad negative, although we try. Visualize the image in black and white. Think about the end product that might look pre-visualized. Okay, then we come to DSL camera technology. We've got a sensor there instead of any kind of film. It's magic. You get instant results. You can actually set your camera to view in monochrome, so you can shoot and see your image in a black and white, in a sense, format. This is, some people would recommend this if you're going out shooting for black and white, to kind of give you a sense of what you're looking at. Okay, and in digital black and white, first thing is capturing in JPEG. Some people are using JPEG only, which is great. You have a limited amount of information to process. But in capturing, RAW was probably the preferred way. And then post-processing it in Lightroom. I'll talk about the modified zone system in profiles and presets. Then I'll talk about a little bit of Silver Effects Pro. Does anybody have any NIC software? You got a couple here? Do you use Silver Effects? You do? Okay. And then Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw. Again, there's 2 options in creating black and white digital. You can shoot in JPEG in the monochrome setting. Then the camera converts it to black and white, and then you can further edit it as a JPEG file. And again, you have a limited amount of information, so there's only so much you can do with the final digital file. Shooting in RAW, of course, is a lot more information, and you have more flexibility on how to convert it to black and white in post-processing. I'll talk first about Mark Wallace is with Adorama. I don't know if some people have heard or seen him before. And I'm just picking out him because I found his presentation to be pretty straightforward. He's taken the zone system for Ansel Adams and kind of converted it to a digital where you have 5 zones based on the 10 zones that Ansel Adams has. And that would be black, shadows, midtones, highlights, and whites. The reference I have up there is for a YouTube video, and since this is being videotaped, hopefully you can catch up when you review it. But I just wanted to have that up to let you know that it's available, and he does a pretty good job. It gets into more depth than what I can do tonight. But the 5 zones basically are, again, black, shadows, midtones, highlights, and white, going from left to right. And if you look at your histogram in your camera, you'll see those sections from left to right, the blacks, shadows, and midtones. Okay, here's your midtones here, and of course your blacks on the left-hand side, and the whites on the right-hand side. And then you've got shadows in here, and then highlights in here. Okay, when you're into Lightroom, if you want to adjust blacks, you can use the black slider. Right now it's on 0. You get the shadow slider. The midtones are actually the exposure. Your highlights, again. And then there's your whites. So those are all the bases that you have in Lightroom. Okay. But the goal is to create a high contrast black and white image. Using the zones, you can adjust the tonal values, but you want to have the blacks black and the whites white. Everything else can be adjusted to your artistic vision. Okay, I'll go through this quickly, but I'll give you a demonstration on these steps. But basically, you convert the black and white, the image to a black and white. You select the midtones, adjust your black point and white point, then adjust your shadows. Again, there's some sliders here. You can shift to the right to diminish your shadows, move your highlights to the left, and then make your color conversion, and I'll show you that in a minute, and then some final tuning. But that's a highlight of what it is. I'm going to do a demo, and let's see if this works out. I'm going to see if I can find the same.
Maybe while you're doing that, how many people here shoot in RAW format? Okay, good.
Takes up all the space.
Yeah, sure does.
Okay, this. I don't know why this is not protected. I've got it on my screen. Oh, there it is. Okay. I know what happened. Okay, so this is a raw image. I'm in the develop mode here. Okay, I'm going to go over to the basic onto the right here. And under here it says, it's just treatment, it says color in black and white. I'm gonna click on black and white here. Okay. I know it's a snow scene, and you really can't tell, there's not a lot of color in there to begin with. Okay, and I'm gonna go down here, and here's whites here. I'm gonna do, I've got the Alt key pressed, and I'm gonna slide this white slider over to the right until I start seeing some white here. So this is basically, I'll exaggerate it a little bit. That's my white point here. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing, holding my Alt, and move my black slider to the left, and start seeing some black. Okay, and there's my black point. So really what I've done now is, looking at your histogram here, I've got something that's white, and I've got something that's black. I like to kind of slide the black over a little bit more. And I know most people are being told that you don't want to clip the highlights or whites or the blacks. But in the black and white, you want to make sure that you do have a good black and a good white. Since this is snow, a lot of light, you're going to see a lot. The histogram moved over to the right, but you want to make sure that there is a true white in here by sliding your white slider over. The next thing to do is take your shadows. There's some shadows in the barn. I'm going to move that to the right a little bit to open those shadows up. But I still have that white and dark still here, but I'm moving the shadows over. The highlights I'm going to be taking down a bit. And again, this is to your own preference. Okay. Now, there's another feature here. If you go down here, it says black and white. Okay. There's no black and white in here. These are colors here. I can actually take these colors and slide them. You probably won't see. See the tree trunk? It's got some yellow in it. I can decide if I want to have it on the light side or take it and darken it somewhat. I can make it even black if I want. Orange. You're going to see a little bit in the tree again, because orange and yellow are related. There may even be a little bit of red in there. Not much, but mainly yellow. There's not much green, so I can move that around. There's not much green at all, so that's not going to do any good. Blue, probably not. So really the only thing that you'll have an option would be yellow or orange in this tree here. Okay, the rest of it is mainly like you would normally do. Adjust your sharpening perhaps, radius, masking a little bit, lens correction. These are standard here. And the effects here, if you want to put a little vignette, I'm going to move it to the left a little bit. Okay, so that is the process. I'm going to go back to the original. This is the original. Okay, so that is basically the process that Mark Wallace has promoted for a black and white. Anybody have questions? Okay. People are familiar with Lightroom already. Okay. That's not the only way to do it, but get back here. Okay, I would guess most people have heard of Scott Kelby. He's well-known in the area of software teaching or education. He's not the only one that knows anything about Lightroom, but I thought his presentation, and here's a YouTube reference up here. He said basically that there's a trick that I learned. If you have an image on your keyboard, hit V, and V will convert that image to a black and white. And you've got to decide, well, what will it look like as a black and white? But hitting V will convert it to a black and white. Not that it's final processed, but it'll give you some clue of how it might look as a black and white image. There may be some that you might decide, well, it's not doing anything for me, so you won't have a lot of time wasted through processing it, but that's a nice little tip.
Is that any different than just hitting the black and white in the develop mode?
I don't think so, but it's just, one key, you hit it and you're done. You hit it again and it goes back, so. But yeah, you can go to the black and white and click on that and get a clue. But, these software developers, and, they always have something new and different. Okay, in his process, he said to open the image in Lightroom, and in Lightroom there's in the Adobe monochrome profile, there's about 17 different profiles you can select that are not quite presets, but they're almost presets. And you can select one of them as a starting point, or it could be the final point. And you can adjust sliders in your develop module to make some adjustments as you wish. On the right-hand side, that's the profile browser. When you click on black and white, you'll have a choice of several on the right-hand side, so it'll give you an idea of what the effect might be. And you can select one of these, and you can leave it as that, or you can make some further tweaks and modifications. Also on the top, it says amount. You can slide it to 100% or 5% or 10% if you want to adjust the amount, how it's affecting the image. At the same time, I want to mention too, on the left-hand side, there's a series of presets that come with Lightroom. And there's a number of different choices here, and what it does is set your sliders and adjustments automatically. All you got to do is go over with your mouse and select one, and then you're more than halfway home. Then it's up to you to make some adjustments or leave it alone and not make any adjustments at all. You can also you can select this some infrared, selenium, some sepia, and some split toning in there. They all fit in the monochrome type process. This is a sky fix that he had an image that had basically just a wisp of one cloud, but it was pretty much blown out. Everything else seemed to be exposed properly, but he had offered a method of making some adjustments to get the definition of the sky. Sometimes you're out on location and your sky is included in the landscape, and you get back to your laptop or your computer, and you say, gosh, I knew there were clouds in the sky, but your image isn't recording any. And this is a method of getting some color definition back in the sky, especially for black and whites. Lowering exposure, adjusting your highlights, shadows, increasing the whites, even talking about dehazing, and then make some adjustments using some dodging or burning as needed. So start start the, first starting point. Move the slider as it affects your amount of, I want to say, your preset. You add clarity, texture, and make sure you get a white point and black point. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. That's so important in black and white photography. You want to make sure you have a good white point and black point. And sometimes too much is good. It really helps out the contrast. There's also some post-vignetting is important. Some people like that. And you can go back to the history panel and see a before and after. Okay, I'm going to try this again and see if I can get this image. This is a color image. This is not coming in up in. Does anybody know how to get this selected?
You can see it on your screen, but not up there.
Yeah, that is actually the PowerPoint image. And I'm trying to select this in Lightroom.
Yeah.
No, this is not. I don't know why it is.
It's just not the way around
Yeah,
our judging program.
it's to do with the extent, do you have your display extended? I assume your display is extended in Windows in a setup. You have to, so you got like, you're telling it you have one screen and two screens.
Or do you need to get out of presentation mode in PowerPoint? Let's see.
Is that it?
Yeah, you probably get out and then go back into,
Here it is. Okay. So going into the basic panel, this is a color course. Click on this black and white selection here. And this is Adobe Monochrome. And I'm going to browse here. And under here has a number of these selections here. Actually, it's black and white. Okay, it has a black and white 01, 02. Sometimes there's some subtle differences between 5, 7. And you get to the bottom here, they'll have what they call blue filter. And those people have used black and white film and used colored filters to accentuate the, say, the clouds or the sky or some other objects. Here's a green filter, or yellow filter. I ended up with a black and white, a number 11 selection. And I can adjust it for this slider here on the amount. I'll keep it there above the middle. I'll close this. And then I can come down here and adjust, say, the shadows. Maybe the first thing to do is adjust the white point. And black point. There's plenty of black there already. And then the shadows. I can open the shadows up to get some detail over here on this pier. In the highlights, I can bring down somewhat. And again, it's all up to your preferences. Clarity. With the black and white slider. In this one here, there's not a lot of color. I know there's some blue in the sky, so I can take the slider here and adjust the color. There's some yellow. I know since it's a sunrise. We do details and lens correction. Of course. And the effects here, post-cross vignetting. I can add a little bit of vignetting there. Has anybody used the masking tool? Okay. I can use subject, sky, or background, but I just want to use the brush here. And I want to add a little bit of exposure here. And this brush is this size. I can reduce the size of the brush here. And since I've got it as a positive exposure here, is about a quarter of a stop, I can kind of brush here. To give it a little bit more definition here. If I want more, I can just take the slide up. You can see where I've added it for an effect. And I want to close that off here. So that's pretty much an easy way to do some black and whites. This, go over here, just select a profile. And this profile happens to be black and white number 11. But I can select another one, whatever I prefer. Okay, I'm going to hit the backslash here to kind of give you a sense.
Ray, on the right hand, on the left hand side is the presets, is that right, for the black and white?
Yes. Yep. Here are some presets. In fact, I can go back to the original. I can go to the presets here and say if I want to do a high contrast, I can click on the high contrast here, and it automatically will set these sliders for those tones. Okay, but once I have that complete, then I can come over here and make some further adjustments if I like, if I prefer, or if I want to see some more shadows here, I can make some adjustments. But this is a good starting point. Here's an infrared. I don't know if you'll see a whole lot in the infrared because there's no green here. That's soft. Some of these just won't work, but it's something that you have to decide on your own. But it's nice because you can just click on these, go up and down here. You also have the amount slider up here. So that's another way of converting to black and white.
I think that slider on the left there is a new feature. What?
This one here?
Yes.
I'm gonna put high contrast here. But you can play around with this as much or little as you want. But again, here's your white point and black point. You've got a lot of black in there. You don't have a whole lot of white here. You might have to punch this up a little bit. You get some white in this area here, but it really makes a difference. Adding more to the contrast. Okay, let me see if I go back to okay, yeah, here's a before and after. I don't recall exactly what I did to get here. Sometimes you don't, but that's what I ended up with. As far as the add-ons, here's a Silver Effects Pro by Nick. It used to be called Google. Even before that, there was another, I believe it was Nick software, on the original Nick software. But as your screen comes up, you have, again, a series of profiles here. You can slide this up and down, and it'll give you all the preset library. They have something they call modern, classic, vintage, and favorites and all that. But you can select on the left-hand side a number of these profiles. On the right-hand side, again, similar, you've got some brightness, contrast, structure. You have some control points where basically you can put this point somewhere on the image and make some adjustments, enlarge it, and increase the lightness or darkness. What's interesting here, they have a number of these filters here. You can click on there, on the one on the left is a neutral, but you have some that will simulate a red filter, orange, all the way to blue. You can have the strength. The other thing, it says film types. It has probably about 25 or 30 different types of film, standard film, what do you call it, grain or lack of grain. So you can click on that and you can decide on if you want to have another feature in there, if you want to have a CPU tone or a certain type of your favorite black and white film. It'll give you that choice. Here's grain, levels and curves, and again you can have some toning. You can do some bird edges, something fancy, and borders. One thing that I like about this software, it has histogram, but also has a loop that it'll show you a kind of a zone system for it. And I'll give you an idea. This is a zone scale of 1 to 10, but it'll highlight, if you were to pick out, say, zone number 6, it will highlight in your image where that might be. So you can make adjustments if you want to adjust the midtones, or if you want to select the highlights, it'll brighten that up. It'll also let you know if you've got any, say, dark or light areas by clicking on little boxes on the scale. So it's kind of useful. Now this is free. It's not free, but it is free. Nick bought it out of Google, and Google had it for free. And when Nick bought it, they kind of upgraded it, and they started selling it. You can buy that. But the Google version of that is still on the internet. And you can actually look for it and load it, and it is useful. It's not a pirated copy. It's been out there for some time.
Is that only for Lightroom?
I believe it's Lightroom and Photoshop, but I'm not sure. But it's available. It probably won't be the current version. It'll be the last version when Google had it, but I'm not sure what kind of additions they've made. But it has a whole series other than Silver Effects Pro. But I just found this out. I heard about it, but I just found this, and that's something, if anybody's interested in, it's a nice piece of software to fool around with.
I was wondering if it's not a standalone program so that you could just bring in an image. I don't know. I was just wondering.
I think you're right. I'm not sure, but I think you're right. Would anybody like to see Silver Effects Pro? Yep, okay. Let me see if I could do this. Hey, it worked that time. Okay, I'm gonna do edit in Silver. I had the number 2 version. So this is not the latest version, but it's good for demonstration purposes. Okay, I took that raw image and it converted to a black and white. On the left-hand side at the top, it says neutral, underexposed, overexposed, high contrast. I'm just going down the list here. High structure. This looks pretty good. This is a smooth high structure. This is high key. High key 2. Low key. Low key. Push process, a plus 1.5. So you got a selection of different types of effects here in the profiles. And you can take, in fact, this is what I was telling you before. I've got it in the loop here, but you've got the boxes down here to the lower right from 0 to 10, and say I want to check out 6. I want to click on 6, and you can see in the sky and at the horizon, that's all that shade, and I can make some changes here, make it disappear in a sense, or I can make adjustments based on this evaluation here. I want to say number 1, which is pretty much black, as you can tell. Here's a 0 here. Okay, that's where pure black is. Was a little bit of black in there. And I want to see at 10 if we have any areas of 10. Pure white. There is some pure white up here in the sky. So really I've got the full range, black to white in this image. I want to try a red filter. That's what a red filter looks like. I'll go back to histogram. Here's the histogram. I want to go to a green filter. Here's a blue filter. I think the red might be the better. Okay. The film types. Okay, this is a neutral film. Anybody have a preference? Agfa, Ilford. Okay. So I've got, what is it? Ilford Pan F plus 50. Okay, so this is what this film would look like if you were using film, but it converted it into some type of digital, I can adjust the grain. So there's a lot of things you can play around with. You can adjust the tone. Cyanotype. Here's a sepia tone. So there's a lot of things you can play around with as far as your final product. You can have a burnt edge. And different types of borders on it. And if it's available for no cost, it might be something to look at.
Do you preferentially use Lightroom when you're gonna start on an image, or do you use Silver Effects Pro?
I would use Silver Effects Pro to start with, yeah, if you're gonna process it. But again, you know, if you don't like it, you can just, you know, actually in Lightroom you can make a copy, a virtual copy, and then take one into Silver Effects Pro, and then use another one for Lightroom. But yeah, you can make 5 or 10 different copies in Lightroom, and then, you know, process it in different methods, and decide later on which one you like the best. And then try to remember what you did. So this is a interesting effect, I think.
You said there's a high key
Yes.
selection. What is high key anyway? What is it?
Light. It's see the sky's almost white. There's almost no definition. In fact, if you would like to, I can show you a neat little high key for black and white, if you'd like. Any more questions on Silver Effects Pro? There are other types of black and white sub-programs, I want to call it, other than this, but I happen to have it, and it's well known, so I thought I'd show you that. Photoshop. In fact, let me go back here. Okay, in Photoshop, you can go to the hue saturation and bring everything, all the sliders to a minus 100, and basically desaturate it completely. And you end up with a somewhat of a flat black and white, no strong contrast, no real blacks or no real whites. So typically, you would go in and create an adjustment layer and go to a black and white, and then you have a series of sliders just like you saw in Lightroom to make some adjustments to this image to get your darks and whites. Here's Adobe Camera Raw, and again, they have sliders very similar to Lightroom. Of course, they're sister software developers. Here's a close-up of a peony, I believe. And here's the adjustments I've made here. And I've made these adjustments so it allows you to see, although it's black and white, the different parts of the flower, you can see a definition of it. I could take this here and make the adjustments, and everything would be very much the same tone. But making adjustments here, the reds, oranges, yellows, and even the magenta. Here's the magenta in here. I made a slide to the right, so you can see that color in here is a black and white or a gray shade in here. You see the yellow here. I increased the yellow, so you can see that part of the flower. I'm not a botanist, but you can tell the difference in between the color and black and white. If I had these all neutral here, it would be pretty much flat, and you couldn't see the parts of the flower definition. But this is something that is fun to do in black and white. Challenge yourself to see if you can accentuate one part of the scene or an item in there by adjusting the colored sliders. And again, here's a reference here, but you import the file, you've got a new layer, you make a copy of it, you make adjustments to black and white, and then use your presets and sliders to make adjustments. It's very similar to Lightroom, what you've seen, and use layers to accentuate the specific areas. One thing about Photoshop that I really like, and most of the time, if I process in Lightroom, I'll use this, I'll export it to Photoshop, the dodge and burn tools, okay, for localized adjustments. This hand is the burn tool, and behind it, you can click on it, is looks like a magnifying glass, is the dodge tool to lighten. And you go up to the top of the screen, it says range. I can select the midtones, and I can go here to lighten. I would kind of lighten only the midtones, okay? Or I can go to the dodge area, and I can darken just the midtones. But if I were to click that, I can go to highlights or shadows, so I can select what I want to increase or decrease as far as lightness or darkness. Okay, this is going to be videotaped, but I don't want to go through this in detail, but this individual, Mark McGee, made a preset for black and white. Okay, and I've tried it, and I've set it up. Anybody use presets in Lightroom? Yeah, okay. Do you make your own presets? No?
Can I ask a clarifying question on the presets?
Yes.
Because I haven't really used presets, but I'm assuming, I see doctors sell them, everybody uses them, but the definition of a preset is basically you're taking an image and here are all these preset sets,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just applying it to that image, and that kind of gives you a foundation to go where you want to go with it, right?
Right, exactly, yep.
But there's a million presets out there, right?
There are, and people sell them, and you can do it yourself.
Yeah, and you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but you do it yourself anyway, right? And
Well,
is there any particular presets that, like in black and white, for instance, that are really useful?
that's why I brought this one up. This one is kind of fun. There's a number of steps here, and I went through and made my preset. Basically, I set the exposure to minus half a stop, the black slider to minus 35, white plus 50. I just followed this recipe, okay? And bear with me. Okay, I want to go, this is the image that I had here. Okay, I'm going to go to this preset that I just talked about. And to make a preset, you go to preset here, it says plus, okay. Just create preset. Okay, these are all the things that are set on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, and whatever is there, okay, say okay. And there it is. So I'm going to go back to what I just showed you here. I call it a hack, but there's the preset. All those settings that I had up there. And on the right-hand side, you can see that the exposure is minus a half. The shadows plus 51 white, blacks minus 51. Just everything that I had on that list, that recipe. And once I get it set there, I go over here, create it, and it'll take a picture of that and say, okay, this is the setting. Okay, now.
And you like that setting? It does things for you that you like in the photograph?
I'm not saying that I like it. What I'm saying is, this guy offered this information. Now, I don't care for that. I would have perhaps it a little bit lighter, but that's a starting point for me. I would go back there and make some tweaks to it that suits my preference. But it's something that, you know, instead of going through there each time and making all these changes in the sliders up and down, it could take, you know, 5-10 minutes or so. But you can click on that and then go back and make some adjustments individually that you like. And in fact, I can go up here, no, over here, it says the amount. Go back here. I can slide this one way or another, if I can, and make adjustments to the amount that's there.
Can I take, I'm sorry I'm taking up time, but
No.
we're talking about presets.
Right.
And, you know, I use a software like this, it's not exactly, but anyway, I have several of them, and, one of the things that I found in doing the adjustments is that every photograph, literally from one photograph to the other, is slightly different.
Right.
And that I might help, you know, use these tools over here, and man, I got that sky looking really blue, like I wanted, but the next photograph, it's a similar photograph, similar, you know, everything, but for some reason, it's not being, the sets are not making it as blue.
Yeah.
So it's almost like each photograph has its own individual personality, you know, chemical makeup, whatever.
Right.
Do you find that to be true?
I
To a certain degree.
yes.
Yes.
This is one preset that I made that I like. I've got a Sigma 150 to 600. Okay. Looking at the right-hand side, there's nothing checked here except lens correction. Okay. I've got remove chromatic aberration in profile here. I've got the profile for that. I'll go over here and I'll check that automatically because I know I use that, you know, taking pictures of birds. You know, so I don't have to go over here. Sometimes I'll forget it, going through all those, you know, checkings and slidings and all that. So I said, okay, I know it's a bird, so I'll do it. I do some real estate, and this won't work here. Well, maybe it'll work here. Okay, here's real estate. Okay. I don't know if you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference there?
Mm-hmm.
This is a set of adjustments here that I can do individually. But if there's a set I can save, it'll save me some time.
Yes.
Okay, but you're right. It doesn't always work. But, you know, it's up to you.
Yeah, it does cut down on the time.
Especially if you go down this list here between the basics, the calibration, the color, the details and all that, you could certainly, or I could certainly miss something going down that list. But if you have something to start with, and then you go back, okay, I can tweak this, because this is different than the image I took before. But it's a time-saving thing. But I got a kick out of these people that are selling packages of presets, and people don't understand how to make their own preset, so they're buying presets from somebody else that made them. But again, you know, will it work for your images? I don't know. But they're relatively easy. You can set up over here the settings you want, and go over here and say preset. I want to save it. Okay, and if you have I would say pictures of a building or a series of buildings, you know, on the same shoot, you know, make your adjustments, save the preset, so the next time, okay, click the preset, and you can delete it if you want at some other point.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, like you say, you got a lot of brick, but you know what your preset you'll work on to a certain degree. Well, not every photograph is the same, but yeah.
This is interesting here. I'm going to, let's see, go to basics. I'm going to go to monochrome and see how it changes. I'm going to go down to the color sliders. This is black and white. See that? This is a poppy. And the center is yellow. In fact, let me go back here. See it's yellow? okay? Now, you really can't tell now, I mean, it's pretty much uniform, but I'm gonna bring that up, that slider up, and to accentuate that. Okay? See, I can make it brighter. This is and this is just changing the sliders. See, this is the green, the stem is green. You can make adjustments to make it light or dark. And you can basically use these to accentuate one area of the scene versus another.
I like that original. You take that?
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Yeah, thank you. I used a piece of foam board behind it.
White foam board?
Yes.
To absorb the light.
Yeah, it just, the background was kind of distracting, so I decided to use that. Sometimes I'll use black, if it's a light flower, put that in back, just back far enough, it's out of the depth of field. Okay, and that's what I did with this flower, basically make some adjustments here to accentuate the light area being the yellow versus this magenta or purple down below here, just to show some differential. Otherwise, it'll be kind of blended together in flat. Okay. Okay, here's a challenge. Go out and put the intention is just to shoot black and white. Not saying that you've got to make changes in your camera, shoot it raw, but think about black and white when you're shooting. And what are you thinking about? You're thinking about lines and shapes and textures. That's what's going to stand out in a black and white image. Choosing interesting contrast, trees, light, background, anything that'll add some drama. If somebody has a 10-stop or a 5-stop filter, they have some long exposures. If you got some clouds, they're great for black and white. But you want to make sure you're free from distractions. You want to make sure it's simple and fill the frame. But it starts out with your composition. Anybody can go take any image and create black and white, but you want to have a black and white that means something and it stands out. We have to train our eyes to see the world in black and white, but I challenge you to try that sometime. Okay. Any questions, comments? Who does black and white every once in a while? Do you? Okay, good. It's a challenge. It's not like, take your camera out and just shooting. It takes some time to figure out composition and what to look for.
Well, I guess I'm old enough that I had to stay. Reality started. Back in those days, that's what all you could afford was the black and white and the dark room, and the color was expensive to process it.
That's right. It was. Yeah. Yes.
I was just going to say that I went to a street photography workshop out of Chicago weekend several years back, and the guy from Seattle who was teaching us, before we started walking through Chicago, he said, okay, now I want you to everybody switch their screens to black and white. And I said, but one of my cameras is a little point and shoot, and he showed me how to switch it so I could see it in black and white. So, street photography, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of street photography, I showed this image to somebody that was asking me about editing. Mm-hmm. So I kind of took this This is transform, get those buildings sitting up straight, first of all. And I ended up cropping here. And then went to a black and white. I just, okay, and again, I want to make sure I have a good white point. See, there's a white point here. Okay, that's probably a cloud. I'm going to take the black. Here's, I've already got black here, so there's no problem there. I'm going to adjust the shadows. Look at the clouds. I'm going to adjust the highlights down. You see the clouds come out? I can add some more clarity or some contrast here. I'm going down to black and white here, and I know there's some color in there, but here's the blue. See the sky? Okay. The original image, you saw some clouds there, but they weren't that defined. These awnings here are bright colored. You can make some adjustments there. Okay, and I'm just going to hit this before and after. And the people I was showing, they're new into photography and editing, but they couldn't believe this was the same image.
You can actually feel the movement now in the black and white of the train. I mean.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of lines in there, and shadows, a lot of contrast, but it really makes a difference with the sky too, giving it a third dimension. Okay. I just want to show you, because I thought it was interesting that you see a big difference between color and black and white. Okay,
Thanks, Ray.
thank you for your attention.
Yes,
The trip, you said on Saturday?
Saturday.
And so that's, did you say that again? What time would that be returning?
Well, at this time of the year where they're getting dark, was what we're wanting to try to do is to get the sandhill cranes flying in front of the sun. It might be cloudy Saturday, so that might not happen, but still, they tend to come in around dark. So it gets dark around 5 o'clock. It's about 2.5 hours, so probably get back about 8 p.m. I mean, you're always welcome to leave earlier, but yeah, it's going to be a full day of photography.
And you sent out directions
Yeah,
on the
I
map
did.
for
Yeah,
people like me who
yeah.
don't have a GPS.
I did send out
So
paper
maybe you could send
directions, so
That's on the side or on the Facebook?
On the site.
yeah, yeah.
What time?
Time we're leaving.
Next time we can wait to get
I think we're leaving at 8 a.m. if I remember right.
8 a.m. from Fleet.
Yeah, 8 a.m. at Farm and Fleet, east end of the parking lot. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'll meet there and we'll carpool if we want, or if you want to leave earlier than the rest of us, you can just follow the rest of us.
That's what you,
yeah.
I told him I have a map, a paper map, and I wanted that's why he sent those out,
Yeah.
so that's great.
And I'll make sure you're on the email list, and so you'll start getting our emails. But,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and welcome to our new members.